Origin Protocol. Expanded Files. Case 001, Chapter 6. I tried to write it down in March. Not everything. I was not foolish enough to think that writing everything down was safe. But the outline of it. The shape of what I had seen. A record that would exist somewhere outside my own memory. I had been trained to preserve things. That was the work of the Ch.06. The work I had been doing for 3 years. Carrying records. Copying texts. Ensuring that things which mattered survived. And I had witnessed something that mattered. Something that should be preserved. So in March I began to write. I used the old classical forms. The ones that required deep knowledge to read. The ones that could be misunderstood as conventional scholarship by anyone who did not already know what they were looking at. I was careful. I wrote slowly. I chose every word with attention. I wrote for 3 weeks. Then I read what I had written. And I understood the problem. The problem was not the content. The content was accurate. The problem was that I could not write what I had seen without making a judgment about it. And the judgment I kept arriving at, the judgment that appeared in every version of every sentence I wrote, was this: what she did was necessary. I did not know if that was true. I did not know if I was the right person to decide if it was true. Park Jae-won had been my teacher. He had corrected my recitation with patience. He had called me little scholar. He had fed me at his table. And I had written, in my careful classical forms, that his death had been necessary. That the entity had been correct to kill him. I sat with those pages for a long time. The question was not whether the record was accurate. It was. The question was what it meant to be the person who created that record. To put those words in that order. To make that judgment and commit it to writing. A witness who makes judgments is no longer simply a witness. I burned the pages in April. Not in anger. Not because I had decided the record was wrong. I burned them because I understood that I was not yet ready to write them. That I needed to know more. Not more facts. I had all the facts. I needed to know more about what I believed. About what I thought the world was and how it worked and what it owed to the people in it. I was 21 years old. I had been a student of classical texts for 3 years. I had watched 5 people die and said nothing. I had witnessed an entity that killed collaborators and protected innocents and then disappeared without explanation. I was not ready to write the meaning of that. So I burned the pages. And I went back to my work. The spring of 1939 passed. The summer. Autumn came. I finished my studies at the Ch.06 and returned to my family in Gyeongseong. I found work. Ordinary work. I kept my head down in the way that everyone had learned to keep their heads down under occupation. Korea was liberated in 1945. Then divided. Then the war. 3 years of war and then an armistice and then the long difficult work of becoming a country again. I got married in 1947. My wife was a practical woman from Suwon. She never knew about any of it. I want to be clear about that. I did not tell her. I did not tell anyone. The silence I had chosen in 1939 extended without effort into the years that followed. It became its own kind of habit. Through all of this I thought about what I had seen in Anong. About Master Park. About Master Cho. About Master Lee and what he had said to me in the small reading room in January 1939. About the entity and the 4 seconds in the courtyard and the empty room at the end of February. I thought about the judgment I had not been ready to write in 1939. I thought about it every day. Not obsessively. The way you think about something that has become part of the furniture of your mind. It was always there. Sometimes in the foreground. More often in the background. A presence that had simply become permanent. I tried once more in 1961. I was 44 years old. I had a wife and 2 children. I had built something small and stable. I thought perhaps I was ready now. Perhaps the distance was sufficient. I wrote 3 pages. I read them. The same problem. The same judgment embedded in every sentence. And now a second problem I had not anticipated. I was older. I had lived more. And the judgment I kept arriving at had not changed in 22 years. If anything, it had become more certain. More settled. More uncomfortable. Because a judgment that becomes more certain over 22 years is not a young man's reaction to a shocking event. It is a considered position. And a considered position carries a different kind of weight. I burned those pages too. And I did not try again. Not until 1987. Not until 2 people came to my door with folders and official faces and told me that Origin Protocol already knew about the designation Mimicry-K001 and the deaths in Anong in 1938 and 1939. I let them in. I sat them down. I made tea. And then I told them to get out their paper. Because I was 87 years old. And I was finally ready to write the meaning of what I had seen. Not in classical forms. Not in careful encoded language. In plain words. In a record that would exist outside my memory. In a testimony that would survive me. I was ready because I had understood something in the intervening 48 years that I had not understood in 1939. The judgment was not mine to make. It had never been mine to make. I was the witness. My role was to see and to remember and to transmit. Not to conclude. Not to decide. Not to determine whether what I had seen was right or necessary or justified. My role was to give the record to people who would ask the right questions. And they had finally asked. This is where Chapter 6 ends. In Chapter 7 I will tell you what questions they asked. And what I answered. And what I still do not know, even now, even at 87 years old with 48 years of thinking behind me. But Chapter 6 ends here. With the burning of 2 sets of pages. With 47 years of silence. And with 2 young people sitting across from an old man who had finally found someone to give the record to. Origin Protocol. Expanded Files. Case 001, Chapter 6. End of record.